Hello and welcome back to Nathan Bell's podcast. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share with your friends. Today, Nate would like to talk about his series of fictional memoirs.
Yeah, so now that I've nearly finished my new novel, 22nd Century Man, my next project is I'm writing a series of fictional memoirs. So I've already written one of my fictional memoirs. Actually, I've written two of my fictional memoirs, and I've got two more to finish. I've started both of the other two. So it'll be a series of four fictional memoirs. I'll be publishing them through Amazon Kindle Direct Publishing. I'll be publishing them as individual stories and selling them as individuals. And then I'll also publish them as a collection as well. So what they are is they're fiction, but they're based heavily on events in my life. I bend the truth a little bit and change things a little bit, but they're very, very heavily based on events in my life. So the first fictional memoir I've written, which I've already published through Kindle Direct Publishing, is Saturday Night on Beaumont Street, which is a short story I wrote about a night spent busking in Hamilton, and all the affairs and the comings and goings of a Saturday night for a street performer on Beaumont Street in Hamilton, Newcastle. I self-published Saturday Night on Beaumont Street about 2 months ago, and I've already sold about 35 copies, and I've had a bunch of great feedback. A bunch of people have come and told me they love it. A bunch of the people who've bought it have told me they love it. And I also read Saturday Night on Beaumont Street out loud at our Reliability spoken word event, The Creative Rupture, last month, to great reviews. The audience loved it and everyone thought it was fantastic. The second fictional memoir, which I've already completed writing, is The Wizard and the Eye-Man. The Wizard and the Eye-Man is a short story. It's longer than Saturday Night on Beaumont Street, but it's a short story about me and my friend the Eye-Man, Matthew, and all the wacky research we do. So it's a stoner comedy. It's a bit Cheech and Chong, and it's about two stoner mates who sit around smoking bongs and doing wacky conspiracy research on the internet. And the story is a bit of a piss take on misinformation, and it's themed heavily around misinformation and accurate information, and it's also themed around mental health and mental illness, because in the story both of the characters are having a psychosis and are delusional at the same time. Both of them, both my character and Iman's character, think they are the Messiah, and they're both doing all this wacky conspiracy research and think that they are prophets from God, from the universe, and it's very themed around New Age beliefs. So I've already written The Wizard and the Eye-Man, and next Monday I'll be starting to do the cover art for The Wizard and the Eye-Man, and that should take 2 or 3 Monday sessions with Tadjan, my visual arts mentor, to do the cover art for The Wizard and the Eye-Man. Then I'll be publishing The Wizard and the Eye-Man through Kindle Direct Publishing, Amazon Publishing. Then I'll be selling The Wizard and the Eye-Man in my famous street art shop on Beaumont Street. The other fictional memoir short story I'm writing is called A Stay in the Ward. And it'll be about 15, 20, 30 pages long. And A Stay in the Ward is about me staying in the psychiatric ward. And it's a bit bent the truth. I went to the psychiatric ward because I thought I was possessed by a ninja. But in the story, I went to the psychiatric ward because I believe there's going to be a nuclear war and that I'm predicting a nuclear war. I do generally believe that as well, and that is a part of my delusion, so it's not too much of a bending of the truth. But I didn't specifically tell the doctors at the ward in real life that I was predicting a nuclear war, even though I do believe that. The other way I bend the truth in A Stay in the Ward is at the end of the story there is a nuclear war, and all throughout the story there is news on the television in the ward saying that there will be a nuclear war. Then at the end of the story there is a nuclear war, and obviously there hasn't been a nuclear war. So that's a bending of the truth, but I thought that would be a fun way to finish the story with the prophetic mental patient who's predicting the nuclear war actually being correct. And it takes place over about 4 days in the psychiatric ward, from my character being brought into the psychiatric ward and all the comings and goings of the crazy characters in the psychiatric ward and the funny people you meet and the funny delusions that I have while I'm in there, and the hallucinations and visions and the meetings with the psychiatrists and the arguments over taking medication. So that's A Stay in the Ward, which is a fun fictional memoir I'm writing, which I am about halfway through that one, through the first draft, and it should take about 10 to 20 more hours to complete the first draft, then another 10 to 20 hours to do the second draft, and then I might do a third draft, which could take another 5 to 10 hours of editing, and then it should be finished. So once I finish 22nd Century Man, I'll be finishing A Stay in the Ward next, and getting that ready for publishment. Then I'll have to do the cover art for that on my support sessions with my visual arts mentor Tajin Lee. Then the other fictional memoir is called The Street, and The Street is a fictional memoir about when I was in the youth refuge when I was a teenager, and when I was hanging around a really rough crowd of criminal guys, and was hanging around on the street and getting up to all sorts of mischief when I was a teenager. We used to get up to all sorts of mischief. I was a real bad egg when I was a teenager, and I was homeless on and off as a teenager, and slept on trains, and used to beg for money and do all this nonsense stuff. So The Street is all about that, and it starts with me getting put into the youth refuge in Maitland where I stayed as a teenager, and then I stayed at a few other youth refuges. So that's The Street, and I've written about 3 pages of The Street, and I expect it will be about 15-20 pages long by the time it's finished, and that's got at least another 30-40 hours of work in it before I finish The Street. So that one won't be finished for a few months, but I'll be releasing them all one after another over the next few months, over the next 6 months. Then I'll release them all as a collection, and the collection will be cheaper because you're buying in bulk, so you'll get all the stories with a bit of a discount. And I'll probably self-publish the collection through Amazon Kindle Direct Publishing as well. I thought about submitting these stories to publications who publish short stories, but I've had a look into doing it, and it's such a mess around to submit to short story publications. You have to go through so much rigmarole to do it, and I also thought about submitting them to competitions, but again, you've got to submit to the competition, then you've got to wait 6 months to see if your story places in the competition before you can submit in another competition. I'd rather just publish them through Amazon and put them out there and get them out into the world, and I make more money selling on the street anyway than I would for getting them published in a publication or for winning a short story prize. Plus I get out there to a bigger audience because I sell a lot of product, and I move a lot of books, so I'll get out there to a larger audience this way, and get my stuff out there to people. So I'm just going to self-publish them through Amazon Kindle Direct Publishing. But all the stories are based very heavily off events in my life, and inspired by true events in my life. So it's a bit of a legacy I leave behind of a fictional account of things that actually happened in my life, and it tells you a bit about who I am and what I've experienced in my life and my personal life experience. So you can look forward to 4 fictional memoirs coming out over the next 6 months. One of them's already out, and the next one will be out in the next month or 2, and then 2 more after that. So there's a little bit about my fictional memoirs which are coming out. So drop a comment in the comment section about whether you've ever written a memoir.